Good evening, Devlin here with you, and welcome to another edition of Mondo Nostalgia Radio. And thank you for joining me here. I almost said tonight. I try not to say tonight or this morning, because I don't know when you people listen to this. You could listen to it, with your morning coffee. You could listen to this in the afternoon when you're doing your housework, or you could listen to this, in the evening when you're just winding down. But it is evening here when I'm filming this, and I'm really looking forward to talking about today. If you're a movie fan, I think you're going to get a real kick out of today because it's all movie based. I'm going to talk the first half about my love of Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy. Of course, the duo of Laurel and Hardy, one of the great early Hollywood comedic teams of all time, and they've recently been featured in a wonderful new movie called Stan and Ollie that I finally got to see, and I'm going to review that film at the end of this. But I decided that Laurel and Hardy means so much to me that I actually wanted to talk a little bit about them, because they do play a big part of my life. And, when I think of, getting involved in improv comedy and stuff, they definitely would be in the top 10 of people who have inspired me, because just their physical comedy and their facial expressions. I've just recently been getting into Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. I've always been familiar with them, but I'm getting more into their stuff. So for me, Laurel and Hardy were always a big thing. Before I start talking about Laurel and Hardy, I want to kind of give a shout out to a lady named Lou, who she mentions that I'm a Sunday ritual to her, and I know I don't have the biggest fan base, but I appreciate all those fans that are out there. I don't care if I have 2-3 fans out there. I appreciate them. So if Lou is listening today, a little shout out for you, and thank you for making me a part of your Sunday, because Sunday's always a nice laid back day for me, and I like that that somebody's listening to me on a regular basis on that time. So thank you, Lou. So my introduction to Laurel and Hardy came through my dad, and my dad really was the person who basically pointed me in a lot of my early love of movies. I've talked about in the past how, our big thing was every Sunday we'd go to a movie, and, and then I just fell in love with movies, and he taught me that even bad movies, could have good things to offer. So my love of that comes from them. It was a family kind of thing back in the late 70s, early 80s. Channel 2 would show something called Sunday Morning Funnies. I believe it ran from 10:30 to noon, and they would show old comedy classics. They'd show stuff like, I believe they'd show Abbott and Costello, they'd show Ma and Pa Kettle, and just anything they could find. And one of the big things is I always got excited when Laurel and Hardy was announced, because they were my favorites, and sometimes they'd play 1 or 2 shorts or one of their features, and I just absolutely loved them, and I'd watch them with my dad. My mom would watch them too, and my mom wasn't the biggest fan of comedy, but even when she was growing up in Germany, she remembers Laurel and Hardy too. Back in Germany, she would call them Dick and Doof. That's what they were known. Dick and Doof is basically translate to fat and stupid. It wasn't politically correct, but was Dick and Doof. Everybody knew. So my mom knew it. So it was something that brought the family together. And I think even my brothers, when they were around, even watched it. And for me, it was just, there's something about Laurel and Hardy I absolutely loved. Their camaraderie, I can almost not say that word, and just their comic timing. A lot of it was very physical humor. They even sometimes, kind of broke down realism sometimes and turned it surreal and stuff, like when Stan Laurel would smoke his pipe, but it was just his hand, and he'd put tobacco in his finger and he'd light the lighter. and sometimes it was his hand that would light the lighter, and it was surreal. Stan Laurel actually called it white magic, because it was kind of like taking something that's normal and just turning it into anything could happen. And I like that they did that, because mostly they played real, but they did add a little bit of that like surreal stuff about it. I have just wonderful memories of them, and I actually, when I got older, I started doing a lot of research on them, and Stan Laurel did write a lot of the group's material. Oliver Hardy would kind of like step in and, you know, kind of go through it to see what he liked or not. But Stan Laurel was like just obsessed with the group and would constantly be writing stuff for them. I like that the stuff always feels timeless. You know, I was watching them in the 70s. Even when I watch them today, I got a great collection recently that has a lot of their stuff. Laurel and Hardy always kind of, their stuff, the copyrights were always all over the place. And when Turner Movie Classics bought them, they were never releasing really good collections. You might get the odd movie here and there, or one of their public domain films. But finally, a company released a collection, and I've just been loving not only re-enjoying all these old things, but sharing them with, you know, my partner Mike, or, you know, my other partner Heather. And I love sharing with it. And it's fun to see that even though a lot of this stuff was made in the 30s and 40s, it still translates. It's that physical comedy and the facial expressions and just the absurdity of it all still translates today. And I love that. Stan and Ollie got their start in the silent film era, and they made a lot of shorts silently. I remember even Channel 79, 57, whatever you want to call it, kind of was both. City TV. Excuse me, I'm fighting a bit of a head cold, so I'm going to cough here and there. But they used to show silent films of them. And although they weren't quite as good as the ones with sound, they were still interesting to watch. Stan and Ollie became popular because when sound came out, a lot of actors and actresses didn't translate, and a lot of them lost their careers when sound came about. But for Laurel and Hardy, it actually improved their comedy, because not only were they very, you know, visceral, but they were also very, they could actually make you laugh too. Like, they talked a lot. You know, where you watch a Charlie Chaplin, where he's conveys all his motions through his face and stuff like that. There's just a wonderfulness of, you know, there's a playful, like, comedy banter that Laurel and Hardy had. And because of that, they survived. And they became, you know, bigger stars because of it. And Hal Roach found this out. He's the producer. He's the person who also brought around Little Rascals, and he made a series of shorts with them, and they made a ton of shorts. Sadly, they didn't make a lot of money on these shorts. There was a lot of sketchiness that a lot of those people had to deal with. I know the Three Stooges also had to deal with them, is the fact that they made a lot of these films before television, so nobody knew what TV was. So when TV came about, they got screwed out of a lot of profits, because the Three Stooges and Laurel and Hardy shorts and Little Rascals all got revamped to be put on TV. And because they couldn't have a contract that said television, Laurel and Hardy were one of the many that got screwed over royalties. And that's really sad that so many did. Charlie Chaplin, I don't think, did, because I think he owned a lot of his stuff. But, like, you know, the Three Stooges gave us a lot of laughs. But, you know, I probably will talk about them one time, too, because I'm a big fan of theirs, too. But they had some sadness near the end of their career, because they had to literally, you know, do college tours just to make ends meet, because, you know, Columbia Pictures was making a ton of money on their TV rights, because Three Stooges became even bigger on TV. But anyhow, back to Laurel and Hardy. they just continued to do great. And then they had some problems with Hal Roach. Hal Roach had a lot of problems with Stan Laurel. And after the filming of one of their most famous movies, March of the Babes in Toyland, I think it was called. And apparently Stan Laurel didn't have a lot of say in the writing of it, and they were kind of supporting in it. But Hal Roach, after that, said, I'm not working with Stan Laurel again. And it was odd because although they were a comedy duo, they had separate contracts, which means that, they couldn't just leave together. Stan Laurel's contract ended, and then Oliver Hardy was still contractually obligated to make more films and stuff. So, Hal Roach, seemed like he kind of was a bit of a player and knew. But, if you've never seen some Laurel and Hardy, they have so many great shorts. Shorts like Blotto and Night Owls, Another Fine Mess, the Laurel and Hardy murder case, one of my favorites. They Go Boom, Perfect Day. Like, just some wonderful stuff. And then they got some feature films as well, like A Chump at Oxford, Blockheads, Flying Deuces. Some of their feature films, are classics. Swiss Miss. And, I just could go on because they just did so much. Pack Up Your Troubles, County Hospital. Bonnie Scotland is my partner Mike, his dad's absolute favorite movie is Bonnie Scotland with Laurel and Hardy, and he just dies when they do the dance with their kilts and stuff. But, if the stuff is out there, you can go to YouTube. There's a lot of it on YouTube, and, I'm sure you could get stuff at your public library. I don't know what they're like in streaming, or you can, try and look and order some of it. I highly recommend it because they are just so incredible. But if you're just starting out on Laurel and Hardy, I definitely recommend just checking out some of their shorts. They're about 20 minutes, 30 minutes long on YouTube. And then you get an idea of if you're going to be a fan of it or not. Because, I know a lot of people of all ages who are Laurel and Hardy fans, but there's some people that just don't like the whole black and white and shorts, and that's fine. That's your prerogative. But if you are looking like a young, movie fan, and whether you're just interested in seeing older movies, Laurel and Hardy is definitely something you should check out because they are a staple for creating the comedy that we now know and love. And and it's incredible. It's nice to see that they've been kind of brought back into the public scene thanks to a movie called Stan and Ollie. This movie came out of nowhere. I didn't know of it. And then what happened was suddenly I just saw a trailer for it last fall, and it said it was coming out at Christmas. And it took us a while to finally get it, but thanks to a little venue here that just started showing indie films, the Playhouse, which I'm going to talk a little bit about in my second half. I'm going to talk about the Playhouse and the Westdale and how you should support your local movie houses. And they finally played it. I finally got to go see it, and it was everything I wanted it to be. Basically, the movie Stan and Ollie is a biographical comedy drama. It was directed by John S. Baird, and it stars Steve Coogan as Stan Laurel and John C. Reilly as Oliver Hardy. The film did get a proper premiere in England. It is a British film, and it did get a couple of nominations for the Golden Globes, and it did get a couple of nominations for the British Academy Film Awards. Oddly, John C. Reilly got the nomination here for playing Hardy for the Golden Globes, and Steve Coogan got the nomination for the British film. I guess it's because Steve Coogan is British, but I don't know how that works. I don't know if you can be American and get a nomination there. But anyhow, they both got it. They didn't win it, but honestly, their performance is absolutely incredible. I think somebody recently said that they don't just take on the role, they resurrect the characters. They are so spot on as the characters. And it's interesting because a lot of the interesting thing about Laurel and Hardy is not only did we get a lot of shorts and movies, but they did a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Like there's a lot of home movies that were taken by a family and friends. So you got to see a lot of insight. And if you go looking around, you can find a lot of this stuff online. And it's interesting to see because, you know, we've had little interviews with them and stuff. But it's interesting to see how they get their little quirks and stuff. And like both are absolutely phenomenal in the role. And quite frankly, this movie, if you're a fan of old-time Hollywood, you definitely want to check this out. Now, this does not cover their whole career. In fact, this covers the last part of their career. Basically, it starts at the height of their success, and as I was telling you with that story where Hal Roach basically was done with Stan Laurel and broke the comedy duo up, it basically, the majority of the movie takes place 15 years after they stopped working together, when they decided that there was a chance to get another film offer. They were going to do a remake of Robin Hood, and they were going to go on a European tour in order to let people know that Laurel and Hardy are back. And, you know, the tour, it's you know, we're dealing with in the 50s now. So, you know, television has taken over. Comedy is changed in so many ways. And so they deal with a lot of that, how a lot of people don't consider Laurel and Hardy not pertinent anymore, and how it's hard for them when they start coming back that people are even interested in it, or why do we want to see these people? In some cases, people think it's just people recreating them. And it's interesting to see, and it deals a lot with their personal lives too. The other actors in this movie are Nina Arianda and Shirley Henderson, who play their wives, and I have to give them a shout out because they're not in front of the camera, so I can't say if they did a pitch perfect performance. From the pictures they show at the end of the film, they do look a lot like them, but their performances are very, very interesting and unique, and you can definitely see how they would have shaped the lives of their counterpart. Stan and Ollie is not only just a biographical pick and a look at some of the comedy routines. In fact, after my friends went and saw this, we all went home and we watched some of their shorts because that's how good this movie is. It just makes you, it's kind of like when I saw Bohemian Rhapsody, I came home and listened to some, Queen songs, even though I just had an evening of them. But it just made me crave seeing that simplistic old school comedy, and they do a great job of it. And what's neat about this is not only do they hit the dramatic beats, but they show some of the little comedy skits that they did. Yeah, obviously taking liberties, that's what they do. But the thing I loved most about this movie is they actually show the love affair of Stan and Ollie, the friendship, because it's kind of established that they were a comedy duo first and foremost, and a couple times they question if they were even friends or not. But as you see their trials and tribulations as they try to get this new movie, get their careers back, even though they're aged Hollywood stars now and Hollywood doesn't even want them, they through the trials and tribulations, you find the love that they have for each other, even though it's not your typical love. So I would say Stan and Ollie is not only a love story based on the two leads, but it's a love story for old school Hollywood. And John Baird, who directed this, did a great job. In fact, there's parts in this where they even kind of add the skits to the dramatic parts, which I thought was very daring, and I thought some people might not like that. I actually had no problem with it, but I could see why some people might have some issues with the tone of that. Like you'll just see, you'll see them do stuff on stage, which is a skit. But then other times they're actually in reality and the skit will come. After I read about Stan Laurel's White Magic, I thought it was actually quite nice that they kind of incorporated that in there. And John Baird, who directed this film, should get some kudos for adding that, because it really added stuff to the thing. If there was any problems I had with this film, I kind of wish we saw a little bit more of the glory days. As I said, this movie jumps right into pretty much them filming one of their most iconic films, Way Out West, and that's pretty much all we see of their heyday, because this movie is focusing on it. But since this movie was only 97 minutes, I think they could have bumped it up to 2 hours and showed us the rise as well. I know it would be more of a mini-series, and hopefully somebody considers doing that, though I'm sure there's some great documentaries out there that I probably will look at, because I'm still obsessed with Stan and Ollie. Even when I was in my 20s and I started researching a lot about them, here I am in my 50s and I still want to go out and look at documentaries and stuff. So that shows you just how much of an impact they have had at me. But as I said, one of my only gripes in this film is that they could, I would have liked to see a little bit more of them, when they were in the limelight, because it kind of, for, new viewers watching this, you might not get a sense of just how big these two were. And, they can say it with words and stuff, but it would be nice to have seen a little bit more of that. But overall, if you're a fan of Laurel and Hardy or old school Hollywood, you definitely want to check this movie out. I'm going to give this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. And it's probably done. You might be able to find it in some indie theaters, but it should be coming online and in, on DVD and stuff soon. So look for those streaming sites or whatever term you use and check it out. And until then, hit YouTube, maybe after you listen to the podcast, and check out some classic Laurel and Hardy. They'll definitely give you a smile, and that's a good thing. And in these days and time, who doesn't need a good smile on their face? I certainly do. Anyhow, I'm going to take a short break, and I'm going to keep on the movie theme. We have 2 little theaters that have finally reopened, and I've talked about them a little bit, but I want to actually give them a lot of love. And this isn't just going to be about those 2 little theaters specifically. It's going to be about supporting your local movie theater and why it's so important. And we are going to take an intermission, but I'll be back right after this.
Hurry, step right this way, folks, for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, taste-tempting candies of finest quality. Enjoy popcorn, exploded into tender, delicious, crispy bites of crunchy goodness. Enjoy the tops in cool, refreshing soft drinks. If you want to enjoy some refreshments, this is your opportunity. There will now be a short intermission.
Welcome back. Devlin here with you, and if you just tuned in, you're listening to Mondo Nostalgia Radio, and I've got my second half here. Hopefully you got yourself a drink or something to snack on, and we are going to be talking about local movie theaters and how important it is to support them. I live here in Hamilton, Ontario. I live off Stony Creek, which is right next to it, so it's part of Hamilton, Ontario. And when I grew up, I used to have a choice of tons of movie theaters. There was the Jackson Square theaters, there was the Lime Ridge Mall theaters, there was, the Cinema, the Highland, the Odeon, the Century, the Tivoli, Cinema, you could just go on and on. But they started dying out when multiplexes came out. And we started getting our first Silver Cities, and like many cities that weren't really big, places like, Toronto, New York, Montreal, they probably have a lot of theaters, but smaller towns started losing those one theater theaters, the ones that only could play 1 or 2 movies, and, suddenly they were all over the place. Now, I'm not trying to bash the big cinemas. They still play movies, and that's a plus. But eventually in Hamilton, we started losing pretty much everything. We, had the Cineplex Silver City, but they even took away all these little theaters, but even some of the, our other, cinemas that were like multi-cinemas too. And we really got down to only Jackson Square and our Silver City. And we did have a couple of smaller theaters like Movie Palace, but that eventually died and eventually became the Zoetic. And although they play movies once in a while and they do a great job with them, they weren't strictly for movies. And of course we had the Westdale, and as I got into going back to smaller movies, I loved the Westdale because they played different movies, but even the Westdale was, was just far enough away that it didn't really affect the other movie theaters, so it didn't get gobbled up like the others. But the Westdale closed for a little while to be revamped. And so for a while, we had absolutely the only things we had going for us is the Jackson Square Cinema, the Zoetic when they played the odd movie, and of course the Cineplex, which we had a Burlington one, we had an Ancaster one, and we had the Mountain one. And we also had a little theater in Burlington called the Upper Canada, which plays cheap theaters, which I absolutely adore and I love and I strongly recommend. But what I liked about them is they actually got a couple of the smaller movies that I wanted to see. As much as I like the Cineplexes, I don't like that you don't get a lot of variety in them. Sometimes they will play some of the smaller movies, but there's a lot of indie films that get lost, and you pretty much had to wait till they came out on DVD, or if they streamed, or, if they were on like a movie channel of some sort. And so for a while there, we always knew the Westdale would reopen, but, we weren't even sure if they were going to show movies or if they were going to become like a playhouse, or like a house that shows plays or musical. And they always said that they would always keep movies intact and stuff, but we really didn't know. So for a while there, it was getting a little touch and go, and in that time I had kind of learned to, I had kind of learned to just deal with it, but I also started not really loving the Silver City anymore. The ticket prices are high, and for some big event films, like something like the Infinity War, Avengers Infinity War, or like a Spider-Man movie, or one of the Marvel movies, or even DC movies, I don't mind paying a little extra. But, when you're starting to pay extra for, little films, and then the concessions, and I've never been one to bitch about the concessions because I know how movie theaters work, and I know that the concessions is really where they make their money. So I will buy concessions, but when you're going to the theater, if you're paying $12 for a movie ticket, and then you're paying maybe $15 if it's a 3D film, even if you don't want to see a 3D film, it's the only showing you have. And then $15 more to $20 on your concessions. That's an expensive night out now. And so when the Westdale said they were going to reopen in February of 2019, I was very happy I'd get to see some indie films again. And automatically they were right in the game by saying that their tickets were going to be increased to $12. But again, this is now a little independent movie house, so I don't mind paying that because of the fact that I know they're just kind of running and trying to survive. But they introduced a membership pass that if you bought the pass for $10 a year, you would basically get all your movie tickets for, I believe it was $9. But before the Westdale opened, it was announced that an old theater that I remember as a child for being notorious was reopening as an independent film, and it was a little place called the Playhouse, and it was on Sherman Avenue just off Barton. And I didn't even know this theater even existed anymore. I assumed it was gutted long ago and not even a theater. But when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, this was the only theater I didn't go to as a child because it played well, dirty movies. It was a porno house. And and I even remember a friend of mine who knew the family that owned it, that lived upstairs. And, here's this family eating family dinner and doing family type stuff. And downstairs, there's all these men in trench coats going to see porno movies. Now, for you young people out there, before the internet was around, or before any of that, they used to show adult films in movie houses, and yes, people would go see them. It mind blows me too, and I was brought up in this generation, but I wasn't old enough to go to the Playhouse, so I didn't see it that way. So, but when I see the size of the Playhouse, I'm just like shocked at how this, I can't picture a group of people going in watching people having sex on the big screen. I don't know, it blows my mind that this used to be a thing we did in groups and stuff, but I'm sure everybody sat appropriately separated so they could have their own me time. But when the Playhouse announced they were opening, and this independent film, they own another theater, I believe, I want to say in either Oakville or Mississauga, called The Princess. I could be wrong. I didn't do my research. Bad podcast host. But they are opening this one, and immediately they said the same thing. They were going to play indie films. They're going to play old films. And just like the Westdale, they're also going to have live concerts and special presentations. Now, I talked a little bit about this place when I went to see The Room. Now, also the Playhouse offered the same thing. Their ticket prices were $12, but if you bought a $10 membership, you would get your tickets for $8. And there would be special prices off, like you could buy a small drink and a small thing for a couple of bucks. Just to say thank you for supporting the thing. So you could actually go see a movie and get concessions for under $20. And so I instantly thought, wow, this is incredible. I went to see The Room, and it was great to see this old theater for the first time, and it was packed. It was thing. And if you want to hear that was on last week's episode, so you can check that out there. But the good news is that I went to see it for Stan and Ollie, and we had probably about half a house, a theater filled for a matinee showing, and this made me happy. Now, I've heard other people saying that they have gone to the Westdale. Now, I haven't been to the revamped Westdale, but I'm going to go see it this week. So I can't wait for that. And I've been asking people if they go to the Playhouse or the Westdale, was it full? And how many people? And I've been happy to say that every time I've asked, people have said that it's close to half being full. The reason I'm so obsessed with this is that for a while there, we were running here in Hamilton, no independent theaters. And now, magically, we have two. And they show similar movies. In fact, in some cases, they show the same movies, but they show them at different times. And they show also very different kinds of movies. And I look forward to the stuff they're offering. But my big fear as a movie fan is that if people don't support their local theaters, they're going to go bye-bye again. And as we see that things are changing in the media world, as in streaming has become so popular, there's rumors, and I plan to talk about this someday, but I'm going to break out crying if I do, that we're within 5 years of seeing the end of physical material like DVDs, 4K, Blu-rays, all that stuff. Samsung, one of the biggest producers, has said that they will still produce Blu-rays, but Blu-ray machines they will not. Usually when a big company like that makes this declaration, others start contemplating it too, which means we may see a day very soon where it's going to be hard to find. But I will talk about that on another show. But as I said, I'm very emotional because I like my physical copies of movies. But again, I can't stress enough that you need to support your local film house. Now, if you're not close to support the Westdale or the Playhouse, look around in your town or city, because there probably is independent theaters out there too. Now, I'm not one of these people that are saying just support local theaters. I'm not. For some of the bigger event films and bigger movies in general, there's nothing wrong with going to the Silver City. I would love to support local businesses and shops all the time, but financially I can't afford it, and sometimes you have to go to those bigger stores or bigger movie theaters to see what you want. But I think you can still go to those big movie houses and still support independent films. Take chances on movies. A lot of them have, both the Westdale and the Playhouse have really nice websites that tell you a little bit about the movie. And I love taking chances on a movie. I saw trailers at the start of The Room and at the Playhouse that when I saw Stan and Ollie, that I didn't even hear of these films, or I've heard of them, but I didn't know anything about them, and the trailers just got me thinking, okay, let's put a check mark on that. I've already been twice to the Playhouse, and as I said, I'm hoping to get to the Westdale this week, and I'm hoping to be able to go back to the movies on a regular basis. And even though the summer's coming up, and I know I'm going to be hitting those big cineplexes, I'm going to be definitely checking out Captain Marvel and Infinity War, but I like that we have these movie houses now that I can go check smaller independent films. Because I hate to say it, but now as I get older, I'm just getting out of seeing the big blockbuster movies that the big studios tell you, this is the next big hit. And I've become out of these a lot of times very underwhelmed. And so I'm kind of been excited to get back to my roots. As you know, I've been kind of investing and checking out older movies that I haven't seen. And this includes, looking into some independent films or rarer films. I wish I could get a grant. I guess we all wish we could do this. Get a grant where you could just watch movies and say, no, I'm a reviewer. Can I do this as a living? Well, yeah, you can, but I still need to go to work in that because I don't make enough on my film reviews and stuff. But I still keep doing it for the creative outlet of it. But I wish I could, because I'd love to be able to watch one movie a day, but sometimes it takes forever just to find time to watch a movie. And then you got to be in the right state of mind. And I can watch movies early in the morning. I can watch them, right after dinner. I can watch them late at night. I can watch them anytime I can. Then there's times where you just I don't feel like a movie. Let me put a Brady Bunch on, or a Lost in Space or something. And we get like that. I see people on my Facebooks and stuff that seem to watch every new show that comes out. And they're always up to date with the top movies that are playing theaters. And I think to myself, how do you do this? I juggle a social life, so I like to spend time with friends and have game nights and stuff. And, and I don't know where they find the time, but good for them if they can do it. Movies are my passion, but I still also need to have people in my lives and hang out with them and do stuff with them, and not all of them are movie fans like I am. So, but you know what? I still have a great time with it, and I always look forward to checking out a movie, and I really hope that you do support local theater. And I'm not telling you to stop going to the big cineplexes. Obviously, I'm not going to miss seeing Avengers Endgame. I know I've been calling it Infinity War, but I meant Endgame. And there's a couple other big movies I want to see this summer too, but there's so many small independents that, I basically barely know anything about them, but I want to go and try. I found Stan and Ollie. I wouldn't have been able to see this until I saw it, on DVD. And even then, sometimes it's hard to find indie films, or you pay an arm and a leg. And taking a chance on an indie film, but you're having to pay like $25 for a DVD, and you're not even sure you're going to like it. Kind of scary. So I'm glad I finally have this chance, but it's important to support these local movie houses. And, in the Hamilton area, we're lucky because we not only have the Playhouse and the Westdale now, but we also have the Zoetic, who plays great sing-along shows. The Staircase Theater, which I do a lot of my improv. They don't do a lot of movies, but they are one of the main hosts of the Hamilton Film Fest, put together by a friend of mine, Nathan Fleet. And it is, they do play movies time and time again, and you need to seek these out. Also, the Art Gallery of Hamilton also shows movie nights too. Public libraries, you can check out times for them too. And they don't always just play like family friendly stuff. They have nights where they actually show some smaller independent films. So yeah, these aren't local movie houses, but I'm also helping you people who might not be able to even afford to go to the movies. Like, you know, usually the libraries are usually free to check out and stuff like that. They're usually very, like, they don't have like 5 times to see it. You make it the one time and that's it. But definitely promote these small things. And we need to promote small independent films. A lot of these movies are going right to streaming sites. And since we're losing media, we're losing physical media, I hate to think one day we'll lose movie houses where we don't get a chance to see these independent films. Yeah, it's great and convenient that if you have streaming services that you can pop these on. But the thing I love about the movie-going experience is the fact that you're with the movie, you're bonding with the movie. And I'm not saying you can't do that at home, but I've actually went over to friends' houses who actually put streaming on, and I'm surprised at, you know, how a scene will be on and they'll go to the bathroom, or they'll go make popcorn, or they'll answer phone calls or be texting, and they won't pause the movie. They'll just let it go. And then when they're talking to me about, yeah, I didn't really enjoy that film, I kind of want to say, well, you didn't really join it. Even when I'm in a movie theater and I'm seeing a bad film, I'm connected with that film, and that's why I can really relate to it. I even say myself sometimes, if I'm preoccupied with something, that maybe I can't give the best review to it because I didn't find a bond with the film. But I've even bonded with bad films, and, you know. But I think we're losing something if we lose the old movie houses. And that goes for the Cineplexes too, though I think there'll always be a movie theater around. I'd like to have the variety still. I'd like to have the big Cineplexes so I can go see those big films. Or I would like to be able to go and check out a smaller film, or a foreign film, or a silent film, or an old retro film. And it's these smaller independent films. Now, first of all, I give kudos to Cineplex. They do show some retro stuff, and I love some of the other things. I love that they actually show like wrestling events. I love that they show the opera or Broadway. I think that's phenomenal. I've never been to one of these, but I've always wanted to go to one of these. And I love that they've been actually showing sporting events, and in some bigger theaters, they've even shown like the premieres of like Game of Thrones and stuff like that. So I do give the bigger chains a little bit. We don't have a lot of big chains here in Canada. You know, we have like Landmark, and I think we have one called Empire, and we have Cineplex. And besides that, we really don't have much, where the States have quite a few. So they get a lot of diversity and stuff. And you know, I hear a lot of people talking about we need to see movies with more diverse voices, and I agree with that. We need to see movies made by women, made by people of color, people of different races, people of different sexual orientations. We need to see all that. We need to see more, you know, of the, you know, white males as well. We need to see a little bit of everything, and these movie houses might show film festivals that are geared to the LGBT community, or movies that are geared to, you know, women and stuff like that more. And these smaller theaters might actually start blending things, as in like other people might be checking them out to see, hey, I'd like to give this a chance, you know. I know this is a women's festival, but I want to check out these movies and these up and coming, you know, filmmakers and stuff. And sometimes in a Cineplex, when they only have like 10 theaters and 4 of them are playing Captain Marvel, yeah, it's great. You get a chance to see Captain Marvel whenever you got. But that's 3 theaters that are missing out on playing a different film. I grew up at a time where you lined up and you stayed in that line until they let you in, and you fought to fight movies. And I just feel that we don't really fight. Everything's so easy to go to the movies now, that I think we need to find that love affair with the movies, and I think that all starts with the movie houses. As I said, I'm already going to be dealing with the fact that we're losing the physical media. I don't want to deal with us losing these little charming little movie theaters. So anywhere that's playing a movie, go support it. You can watch your streaming, maybe on the movies that you're really not sure of, but take some chances. Head out to those movie houses. And hey, if you've listened to me early enough, why don't you go hit some of your local movie theater websites and see what they got playing tonight and check it out. Tell them Devlin sent you. That probably won't mean anything even if you go to a Hamilton theater, but who knows? You might meet someone that says, oh, I know that guy. Anyhow, I had a great night talking to you. A very short episode, but I talked about things I absolutely loved, so it made it a good one. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what your thoughts on, or if you've seen some great independent films that you think I might like to check out. I'm always interested to hear what you know, and I look forward to talking to you all very, very soon.